to Special Education Conference, Traditional and Remote Settings at the University of Verne. The purpose of this conference is to address any kind of traditional and remote settings available for you in the special education environment. The first part is the opener, which consists of a mindfulness activity and topics of special education law, such as referral process, parent rights, and SPED law overview. Then, the next part is universal design for learning, followed by accommodations. Then after a 5-minute relaxing stretch, we will begin again with behavior, resources, and finally with transition pathways. And now for introductions. My name is Will McTarsney. I'm one of the opener's hosts.
I'm Jennifer Soto, and I'll be hosting the referral process in the opening of our presentation.
Hi, my name is Alana Smarinelli, and I will be hosting Parents' Rights in the Introduction Conference.
My name is John Abbas. I'll be presenting special education law in our opening.
And that's our opener team. This entire opening will last approximately 25 minutes. And during your conference experience, we advise, be in a separate room environment with your own device. Have a web browser ready. We use Padlet.com and Kahoot.com websites for all activities. And these activities can be also downloaded on your mobile device. Pause the video during our reflections or at any point where you need to pause and look at the information. We invite you to participate in an activity that we may use to assist teachers, parents, and students de-stress during this very stressful time or any time. Please join us in this activity to get an idea of how it is done. You will be invited to close your eyes, but if that is not comfortable, please just hold a soft gaze. You may stand or sit. If you're standing, stand naturally and not in an aggressive posture, with your soles firmly flat on the floor. If you are sitting, sit comfortably with your soles firmly flat on the floor. Next, close your eyes and keep them closed. For your breathing, breathe naturally. Place your hands by your side if you're standing, or place gently on the top of your desk while sitting. Recall a moment to an incident that made you angry and hold on to that moment. Once there, allow the anger to flow through your mind and do not let it go. You may experience rapid breathing, which is a sign of anger and the activation of the sympathetic nervous system. Shift all your attention on the soles of your feet. You want to concentrate only on the soles of your feet and nothing else. Now, slowly wiggle your toes and feel the sides of your shoes, its fabric, the space in which they reside. Feel the texture of your socks, the curve of your arch, and the heels in the back of your shoe. Define in your mind the sensation of your feet in a comfortable place. If you do not have shoes, feel the ground. Rub on the firm carpet and the soles of your feet. Breathe naturally and focus on the soles of your feet until you feel completely calm and free of any aggression. Slowly feel a sensation of calmness from your soles. Now, up your spine and back to your face. When ready, open up your eyes. Spend a moment with your peers and share what you felt. Do you feel more relaxed? And now we begin with introducing our main topics. The first topic is the referral process, which is a part of the steps required to determine if your child qualifies for special education. Throughout our segments, you will hear a lot about the steps and the laws, such as IDEA, which is a federal American law that ensures students with a disability are provided with free, appropriate public education that is tailored to their individual needs.
Concerns that your child may have learning difficulties. So where do I start? What is the referral process? The referral process is a series of steps taken to evaluate whether a child is eligible to receive specialized services. These services may be educational or behavioral services or anything related to what a child may need to properly access an education. Step 1 is the evaluation. So looking at the graphic on the right, you'll see referral is in green. The first step of the referral process is the evaluation. That's the first bubble in orange. If you suspect that your child may require services for support, either educationally or behaviorally, the first thing to do is contact your school district. When you require that your child be evaluated, this is the first step in the referral process. Through IDEA, districts are required to identify, locate, and evaluate every child who may have a disability requiring services. When contacting your district, ask for a child find coordinator. Step 2 is the eligibility. So before your child can be evaluated, you will need to sign a consent form, giving consent for a district representative to assess your child. The role of the evaluator is to determine eligibility. You will meet with the team to discuss the eligibility results to determine next steps. Step 3 is the IEP. If it is determined that your child is eligible for special education, an IEP or individualized education plan will be made. The IEP is a document that will detail your child's education plan. The team will be made up of teachers, service providers, admin, and you. You know your child best and can add important information regarding next steps for your child. Step 4 of the referral process is placement. Your child will be placed in an educational setting that will most benefit them or give them the best educational benefit. It is through this that your child will receive related services discussed in the IEP. These services can include speech therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy, audiological services, adaptive PE services, and vision services. All services discussed during the IEP team meeting. Step 5 is instruction. Instruction will center around your child's specific IEP goals and needs mandated by the IEP to meet their educational benefit. Goals will be created during the IEP related to what your child needs to find success in their education. Instruction will include accommodations and modifications related to your child's specific identified educational needs. And the final step is the annual review. You will convene with the IEP team once yearly to go over the process made during the educational calendar year. The child's progress, IEP goals, and placement will be discussed at this time. If there are any changes to be made, it will happen during the yearly IEP meeting unless meeting is required by the parent or IEP team sooner. That concludes the referral process.
Now we're on to parents' rights. Representation matters. And you ask how? Well, free and appropriate public education. It provides at a public expense under the public supervision and direction and without charge. Meet the standards of the State of Education Agency. Includes preschool, elementary, and secondary. Provided in conformity with the IEP requirements of the IDEA. So procedure safeguards. On the next clip, I want to show you a video where at least one time a year, the parents of a child with disability must receive from a school system a complex explanation of all procedure safeguards. Up next, will you see a video?
An important component of IDEA is that the rights of parents are ensured. This is known as parents' rights or procedural safeguards. It is important to note that IDEA was set up as a team decision-making process, utilizing the consensus model. However, if the time comes when all team members do not agree or cannot come to a consensus, then this is when parents can invoke their parents' rights. Let's first discuss what is meant by consensus. A group reaches consensus when it agrees on a choice, and each group member can confidently say that, "I believe that others understand my point of view. I believe I understand the other's point of view. And whether or not I prefer this decision, I support it because it was arrived at openly and fairly and is the best solution for us at this time." Please note that consensus does not mean a unanimous vote, a majority vote, or really a vote of any kind. It is not a guarantee of 100% satisfaction. There may be times as well when there is a conflict among the IEP team members. Conflict is a signal or message that something is not working and needs to be changed. There are times when communication breaks down and the school-home relationship may become strained.
You may watch the rest of this video on our Padlet. Summary of parents' rights. This is very important. The first 4 steps of your child's education. Parents provide the right to participate in meetings related to the evaluation, identification, and decisions regarding their child's education. Next, parents have the right to participate in meetings related to a free and appropriate public education, which we call FAPE, for their child. Next, parents are entitled to be members of the group that decides whether their child is a child with a disability and can receive special education related services. In this slide, parents are entitled to be members of the group of decision-making in their child's education. So they have the right to participate, the right for written notice, the right to consent, the right to access education records, the right to request a hearing, the right to keep a child in current placement, the right to mediation, and the right to information on disciplinary action. These are all the rights that parents have. Make sure you keep this in mind. It could be a little confusing here with the distance learning, but remember, you still have those rights.
You've heard information about the referral process and parents' rights. You must be wondering what it is exactly that supports all of those things. What is to say that you might approach a school and not receive the same supports, you might not see consistency across, all these different districts and these different states. And that's when we get to special education law, where you've already heard a few times now in our presentation, IDEA, FAPE, or Free and Appropriate Public Education. And those are the laws that we're referring to that cover special education in this country. The first law that we're going to look at, or revisit rather, is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA, which was established in 1990. IDEA has had a couple of different names, and it's been amended and developed over the years. It started off with Park versus Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. It was a legal case in 1972. Then it turned into Education for All Handicapped Children Act in 1975. And finally, it reached Individuals with Disabilities Act in 1990. And actually, it's been amended once again in recent years to add another classification. Individuals with Disabilities Education Act of 1990 has basically 6 principles. And the first one that we've heard of many times now is FAPE. The idea that a student with a disability cannot be denied a free and appropriate public education, appropriate evaluations, individualized educational plan, least restrictive environment, parent participation, and procedural safeguards, which we just heard from my peer discussing parent rights basically. All 6 of those principles fall under IDEA, and they are protected by that federal law. Now we're looking at FAPE again, Free and Appropriate Public Education, and we're expanding on it to understand that every child, disabled or not, is entitled to a free and public education. But in this case, FAPE applies specifically to students with disabilities. It prohibits discrimination against students with disabilities in programs that receive federal funding. So the idea is that if you're a school that receives federal funding, then you have to abide by this law in order to continue to receive that funding, right? And finally, students must have enough support to receive educational benefit. So that's the appropriate part of free and appropriate public education, where if a student is not receiving those correct supports, then they're not benefiting from the education that's being given to them. That's when you look at accommodations and modifications in order for the student to be met, at their level, at their area of need, or at that least restrictive environment that we should be hearing about soon. Next is Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. The 504 is different from IDEA because it is a state and local level rather than federal law. It's protected under FAPE. It requires a written accommodation plan. So it doesn't require an IEP like IDEA does. It doesn't have specific categories, or rather 14 specific categories like IDEA does. It's a lot more flexible when it comes to what is defined as a disability. And because of that, students are typically more likely to qualify for a 504 plan, as you've heard of before, maybe. An example of that, there's a lot of examples of how somebody can qualify for 504. But for instance, if my son or daughter, if I know that they use glasses and I know that they would benefit from preferential seating, then I would petition to have a 504 plan written for my students, so that I know that whatever classroom they may be in, they're going to receive that accommodation that they need in order to succeed in the general education classroom environment. And now we're talking a little bit about distance learning and special education law. As it relates to special education law, even though these are times that are very uncertain, there is information being put out there that districts are trying to stay in touch with and trying to stay on top of. One example of that is the California Department of Education, which put out a webinar titled Special Education Distance Learning Webinar. It was released in this month, in 2020, and some of the points that were covered there were how they said, while it's not mandated, distance learning plans should be developed based on a needs analysis. So what the Department of Education is encouraging is that we continue to try to provide services and supports and accommodations even in the virtual environment. So that hasn't changed just because we are in distance learning, right? We're still providing supports based on the IEPs that students have. Virtual IEPs should be held. The schools are being encouraged to hold virtual IEPs. Now, that may vary from district to district because this is also not mandated. And also to use accommodations applicable to the virtual environment. The Department of Ed isn't expecting that we implement or provide every accommodation that's on the IEP, because that might change considering it's a different environment. However, we're still being encouraged as teachers to take into consideration what's on the IEP, what the student needs, and to apply that and provide that to the student.
And now, we have an interview with a parent who is also a first and second grade general education teacher who works along with an IEP team. Welcome to the conference, Mrs. Sanchez.
I'm Jennifer Sanchez. I'm a 1-2 combo teacher, inclusion, elementary education.
Hi, Jennifer. My first question is, as a parent, can you please share your perspectives and challenges concerning how this pandemic has impacted your child's education?
I can. My daughter receives speech services, and since this pandemic has occurred, she hasn't been pulled out on a weekly basis. Her teacher has definitely reached out to me and given me websites of things that I can go onto with her at home. Unfortunately, some of those websites end up locking, or they end up being like they disappear into space. And then I will, send the teacher a message and say, I had trouble getting on this website and not hear anything back from her. I know her caseload is really high. She's got a lot of students, but I feel basically like when we went on break, or, if you want to call this break, when we went off for the pandemic, that her speech is at a standstill. So services and getting any type of help.
Wow. Have you been working with any kind of distance education as a parent? Can you elaborate on any kind of stories?
As a parent in her general ed classroom, her teacher is amazing. She's got math, science, language arts. She even puts PE up for the kids to do. I laugh because she almost puts up too much, because as a working mom and teacher myself, I'm, doing my own lessons for my class, but I would need to sit next to my daughter most of the day to help her get through some of these assignments. So it's definitely been challenging. It's been something that I might not get through everything on from Monday through Friday, but on the weekends when I'm not having to deal with my own class, then I can pull her back and do some of the missed lessons that her teacher assigned.
And then as a teacher, can you share any experiences with distance education?
Yeah, it's really tough. it's easy to do the planning. It's easy to, find fun lessons, get them all geared up and ship them out there into space for the kids. The negative part is you can't look at their face to see if they're learning or if they're actually comprehending and understanding. You don't know how much of the work has been, guided very carefully by the parents. Some of the writing is even in the parents' handwriting. So you don't really get a chance to really truly know how your kiddos are doing. It's been a really tough situation. Physically and emotionally, I miss them very much. So it's been hard.
And how about working with special needs children? In what ways have you adapted during this time?
So I have 3 kiddos in my class that receive services, and I've been able to continue differentiating instruction for them at their level, which has been nice. I know the parents are very appreciative of that. I also have a rock star teacher who is from the resource department, and he comes in and he also assigns activities and assignments for those kiddos to do as well through our teams meetings. And I know that the parents have even expressed to me how appreciative they are of that. Because those kiddos, they're the ones who need that one-on-one attention. They're the ones who need that person sitting next to them saying, come on, you can do this. Come on, let's get back to the paper. Come on. We're together in this. So I think them feeling like we care, and that we are a team and that we're not giving up on them is huge to the families.
Perfect. How about any advice do you have as a teacher seeking information about special needs?
Honestly, being this is my 3rd year as an inclusion teacher, so I don't have a lot of experience under my belt in the special ed world. I say that cautiously because we all have had special ed kids in our classes, even though they're not identified, right? So we've always had to teach, finding things that work for certain kids and different disabilities, learning disabilities and what works and what little hacks we can do. I'm thankful because at my school, I think we have a really awesome team that's very informative. We have, a psychologist who rocks. We've got an awesome speech teacher. We have Mr. Will McTarsney, who just knows the special ed codes and department and knows information inside and out. And when they don't know it, they'll tell you, I don't know, let me check into that. And I notice, especially in my own class, when I have a question with a kiddo, if I don't have a plan, like how do I solve this problem, I know that Mr. Will go and do research and come back and say, hey, I found this, let's try this, let's try that, let's try these things. There's never a dead wall. There's never like, oh gosh, we need to give up. There's always so many avenues to look at, so many different places that we can just go online and research to find answers, books to read, that kind of stuff.
And when you are part of the IEP meeting, what is your role, and can you share any personal experiences?
So I've been teaching 22 years, and the IEP process has changed so much over those 22 years. I remember the days when they would say, you have an IEP today, come in. And I would sit down and they'd hand me the paper and I'd just sign my name and they'd say, okay, you're dismissed. And that was the end of it. I think that things have come a long way and are a lot more efficient. I love being part of the IEP process. I love that I get to come in and share my findings, my observations with my kiddos. I love that I get to hear, the speech teacher's perspective. I love that I get to hear my resource teacher's perspective. I love that I get to hear what the psychologist has done and what she has found in her testing. It just feels like a real sense of teamwork and community, because I know that at the end of the day, we're there for the kid. We're there for the family. We're there to make sure that they are having the absolute best experience that we can possibly give them with education. So I think that my role is part of that team, to be part of that piece of the puzzle, and hopefully with all of us intertwined together, we can, make that year successful for that child.
And do you have any last comments you would like to share?
I would just like to say that I'm really thankful to be teaching in these times. It's been a challenge, but I also see the love and compassion that have come from the different departments of our schools. We can only go up from here. We are always learning, right? Ever flowing, constantly changing. So I think that this is just a good lesson that, life goes on, and we're just going to do the best we can for our kiddos, and not give up on them. So yay to special ed department.
We hope that you enjoyed our opener for Special Education Conference, traditional and remote settings. So far you have heard about 3 main topics in special education: the referral process, parents' rights, and special education law. Next, we will introduce the next segment, Universal Design for Learning. Now, on to the next segment.